Hi, I'm Nate, Miles of Golf.
And I'm Shawn.
And today we're going to talk about playable trajectory and gapping.
So one of the most important things about playable trajectory and gapping is figuring out what each club in your bag is supposed to do, the yardage you want it to go, and how that club is going to perform on the back end once it hits the ground. Do we need it to stop? Do we need it to come in shallow and run out? Are we trying to hit it into a fairway as long as we can possibly hit it? Are we trying to stop it on a green as fast as we can possibly get it to stop? All these things are going to determine what each club in your bag is going to do and its function. So when we're properly gapping, we need proper gaps, proper yardages between each club. Typically, we're looking anywhere between 8 to 15 yards, depending upon where we're going, what club it is, irons, wedges, driver. Driver, obviously, we want it to go as long and straight as it possibly can.
So playable trajectory is the peak trajectory of each golf club and its descent. Typically what we're going to see with a playable trajectory for most players, it's going to be in their scoring clubs, right? So wedge through probably their lowest lofted iron and their hybrid club. So what we're looking for, as Shawn was just mentioning, it's going to be about 8 to 15 yards. We'll call it just a generalized 10 yards per club. And then by the time we get to the back end where we start to lose that playable trajectory, that descent into the green where we're not really expecting to get it close to a hole, then we can see those gaps get a little bit larger. Now we're talking about the 15 to 20 yard range. So for example, between your hybrid and say your 3-wood or 4-wood.
The most important thing is making sure you have a club to hit every shot. If you're at a specific yardage and you have a possibility of getting to a green, we want something in your bag that can get you there. Now, you're only allowed, per the rules of golf, 14 clubs. We're going to try to see every iron go a specific yardage apart from each other. Like you touched on when you're talking about the longer ends, the longer clubs in your bag, between the hybrid, the 3-wood, so on and so forth, at those yardages, you're typically not trying to hit it an exact yardage to get on the green. You're really looking to get it close, especially for most amateurs.
Absolutely.
Talking about playable trajectory and hitting a ball into a green, for most amateurs that may be a 7-iron, a 6-iron, a 5-iron, really what we're looking is we're trying to see a descent angle steeper than 40 degrees. We've kind of found that to be the magic number of where a ball can hit on a putting surface and expect to stop there. So for example, we have a 4-iron here that's being hit with a descent angle of 40.8 degrees. That is right on the edge of perfect. Now, any shallower than this, when that descent angle gets shallower, we can't necessarily anticipate that club, that ball holding a green and stopping where it lands. If we go to the 3-iron, we see that landing angle now drops to 37.8 degrees. So that shallow of a landing angle means that that ball is going to be rolling out a little bit. So we have a couple of ways that we can look at this. We can say, okay, well, we know that it's going to roll out a little bit. And as long as that fits in your bag, it fits in the primary golf course that you play, and you can anticipate that, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, if you want something longer than your 4-iron that is guaranteed to hold a green, well, we need to get that landing angle steeper to ensure that it's going to stop on the surface once it lands. Here is where we can look at possibly going to something like a hybrid or maybe even a high lofted fairway wood, because the center of gravity is much different, the launch conditions of the club change itself, and we can get a steeper descent angle on the back end, helping you hold a green.
Now, Shawn, with a land angle of 37.8 degrees with this 3-iron, say that a player wanted to keep the 3-iron in the bag, what would you say be the primary use of a club like this?
So this club right here has a couple different purposes. First of all, it would be a great tee club where we don't necessarily want it to stop right away. If it can land and roll out a little bit, it buys us a little bit of room. That's just fine. No issues there, because when you're hitting into the fairway, we kind of want a little extra roll, get a little bit more yardage.
Yeah, so basically, like if someone's driver or even 3-wood isn't working well that day and they can come into something that they feel comfortable, they can find the fairway and actually have a second shot into the green, allow them to play their best golf.
Absolutely, precisely.
Beautiful.
And in soft conditions, say if we have a green that slopes back to front and you play a nice country club where they keep it well watered, yeah, that won't necessarily roll out. That has a pretty good chance of holding it, maybe runs out a couple of yards once it hits, but that's not too bad. Now, once we start getting into the mid to low 30s, that ball's not stopping.
Now,
It's
we're,
gonna run
now
out.
we're talking more of a driver type of
Driving iron
angle.
type of thing.
Absolutely.
Hit that low stinger, get a run down the fairway. You're not going to be hitting that into greens and holding them. You may be running them up to greens, but definitely not into the green. And then that's definitely where that function, that the purpose of that club very much becomes a tee club.
Right.
Trying to hit fairways, keep it under the wind, that sort of stuff.
So basically, what we're saying is that if a player knows what they're going to use this club for, it has a job. So they're not going to pull this club out and expect it to land on a green. They're going to use it as a layup club on a par 5, or as we were just discussing, as a secondary tee club, just to get the ball in play. Now, say we wanted to replace this golf club, which I think as fitters, we're probably leaning away from 3 irons nowadays for most golfers. Just because the ball doesn't want to spin a lot, we're not going to see that trajectory that we normally would. So in this area, as we mentioned before, we're probably going to look at a higher lofted hybrid or even a fairway wood. We're seeing more and more 7 woods in play, even on the PGA Tour now. So they're no longer, quote unquote, an old man's golf club. They're for everybody. So basically what we're trying to do is let's figure out where your gaps are, where do you lose your playable trajectory, and what type of golf clubs are we going to put in here to let you play your best golf.
Now, jumping down to the other end of the set, the wedges. The wedges, the whole purpose is to try to get the ball as close to the pin as you possibly can. We want the trajectory and the spin rate. We want to create a descent angle on the back end where it will create a predictable type of rollout versus check with the amount of spin that you have. So really, it's about predictability of what the ball is doing on the back end of its ball flight to help you get the ball as close to that hole as we possibly can.
And then last thing I think I want to touch on with playable trajectory is I want to give what a lot of players might not realize is that every club in your bag should actually go right around the same height. Let's just say on average, if we can get you about 90 feet, which we call the holy grail, where you're producing playable trajectory throughout the bag. We're trying to get every golf club to go that peak trajectory. So when we get to a spot, whereas like our test subject here in the data, where he went from a 4 iron and he lost about 10 feet of height when he went to his 4 or 3 iron, that's when we're going to look for something to help him get that ball back up in the air. Now, there is 2 exceptions to this rule. The driver can go a little higher. It's on a tee. We can swing up on it. We can launch it a little bit higher. And then the wedges, they can go a lot lower. That's where we're going to see our best scoring ability. With a wedge, because it has the most spin, we want to get that spin back to the green as soon as possible, just as Shawn was talking about a few minutes ago. And then, like I said, driver, hit it as high and as far as possible. That way, we can get the shortest clubs in your hand going into the green.